Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salli wa sallam ala Sayyid al-awwaleen wal akhirin Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way to the day of judgment. As to what follows, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We are continuing on now in our new Muslim corner. And the intention of the corner is twofold. One, to provide a space for new Muslims and those who are interested in Islam to be able to come into the center and to meet other people and to socialize, have their questions answered. And the second part of the class is to provide foundational information, practical foundational information that can be used for those who recently embraced Islam. And what has happened over the years is that this has also impacted Muslims who are reviving their faith, who are coming back into the faith and trying to have a more balanced understanding of which way to go and how to practice Islam. That is of critical importance today in this world because things are becoming very confusing with the social media and with so many people claiming to have knowledge, claiming to be Muslim. And of course, Islam is spread all over the world to so many different continents, and so many different types of people. So therefore, Islam for some people is basically, halal food. For other people, it's the way you dress. For many people, it's a family thing. So it's something that people do in the village or people of a certain nationality do. But we recognize that Islam is a way of life. And so it takes in all aspects of the life of the individual. And that is critical for a new Muslim to understand because in embracing Islam, it's a life change. It's a life change. So now, how do we make the transition? And we have looked at a number of issues. We base part of it on the writings of a North African scholar, Sidi Abdurrahman al-Akhdari, and the concepts that he brought for new Muslims. And of course, he said, number one, you should correct and authenticate your faith. Two, you should seek the knowledge of personal obligations, those things that are obligatory. This is for a person coming in now. In other words, what should I do? I've just embraced Islam. What should I do? Okay, so this gives you some direction in how to begin to make this transition. But the third part that we're looking at now is to stay within the limits commanded by Allah, to stay on the straight path. And this is a big topic. And so we want to look at this in a way to provide principles for understanding application of Islam. And then once we've developed a base, we want to go into different topics concerning Muslim life. And this is based upon a number of texts dealing with halal and haram in Islam and basic, what they would call fiqh al-muyassir, an easy form of understanding Islam. There are many scholars who have done this for people who are embracing Islam or people who are just coming into their faith. And so in this light, in the first class, we looked at the first of the principles. So we're looking at basic rules or principles. What are the hudud? What are the limits? And these principles actually help to shape a mindset. That is a mindset of a Muslim. And this is important today because with the world changing so rapidly, with artificial intelligence, with barriers of ethnicity broken down, there's a lot of new challenges. So people who practice Islam in a certain culture, their struggle is based upon what we used to be in their culture. So if they lived in a village or they lived on a mountain, there's certain animals that are there, the weather is a certain way. And so the fiqh, the understanding of Islam, suits that environment. But when you change from a village into an urban center, that's a different story altogether. So how do you practice your Islam in the urban environment? Many people couldn't make the change. They couldn't make the change. And I can recall vividly in one of the masjids here in Toronto, was the Tariq Islamic Center. There were a couple of sisters who came to me afterwards, and they were really upset because it was a huge Jummah, and the brothers were in an area close to the sisters section. And then there were a few people who had come from the so-called Middle East, and they were just sitting there. So the sisters then said, after the salat, they said, excuse me, are you Muslims? And they said, yes. So then they asked them, why didn't you make salat? So the answer was that we can't practice Islam in this country. It's not possible. And based on how our Shaikh taught us, we can't practice Islam. And so this was confusing because their understanding of Islam was a certain way. And if you don't have certain things around you, then you're wasting your time. So this is a bizarre understanding, but what it highlights is the fact that Islam really is not narrow. It's made to be practiced in all environments. Okay, so if you're not in your village, if you're not with your people, you can still practice your Islam. And so one of the ways of being able to do this is to know your limits. You have certain principles that you live by, and this will help you to make decisions. There are a lot of principles. Great scholars have codified this, and I want to break it down in a way that can help people who are recently embraced Islam to start to get the spirit of Islam, the spirit of the principles of Islam. And so the first of these principles is that the essence of all things is permissibility. Aslul ashya al-ibaha. So in other words, when you look at the issue of food, or you look at the issue of dress, you look at the environment. How do I practice Islam? We have to recognize that the basis of everything is that Allah made everything basically permissible. Allah created the creation for human beings to live in. That's a positive approach. And we discussed in our previous class that, for instance, food, basically, Allah has created animals, He's created different vegetables and fruits, and they're basically permissible. But within them, there are certain issues, certain types of food or animals which are prohibited. Okay? So you start off with a positive and you realize there's some negative. Okay? Similarly, when you want to get a job, you want to take on a profession, what do I do as a Muslim? Okay, basically, your basis is that, Allah has given us so many different ways to earn money and to live our life. But within that, there are some issues which are prohibited. For instance, you want to start a business. Okay, if you're staying within the limits, you wouldn't sell alcohol. Now, for some people, especially new Muslims coming into the masjids, many times they find that when an innocent Muslim, somebody's trying to help them, comes to them, they say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. One person came and told me there was 25 don'ts. Okay, like negative, like everything's negative. And then you want to say, okay, what's the positive, right? And I don't blame the person, because the way this society is set up, it's almost like somebody wanted to find all the un-Islamic things to do and put them out front. Okay, so when you go to certain restaurants, or you go entertainment, or you try to buy some clothes, you find a lot of it here is things that Muslim wouldn't want. And that's not because clothing is all, un-Islamic, but it's just the mentality of the people. But it's important that we are positive. We are positive. Okay, so that's the principle. And we understood also last week that to make lawful and prohibited is the right of the Creator alone. So when we're dealing with the issue of halal and haram, now these are big words in Islam. When you say the word halal, today people generally use the word halal to just mean halal food. But halal actually touches every aspect of our life. And the same as haram. And in some languages, haram is used just as a general word. Like in Arabic, they say, don't do this. They say haram alaik. So they say to the child, don't do this. It's haram alaik. Okay, but haram, in the real sense of the term, is a very serious thing. Because halal, as we learned last week, is that which is permitted. There's no restriction on it. And you're actually pleasing the Creator by doing it. The Creator has allowed you to have this halal. But haram is something which is prohibited. And that ugly pig there, you don't need jurisprudence, but some people do. In any event, when you say haram, it means that when the person does that, they're actually committing a sin. They are doing something which they could be punished for. So haram's a big word. So to say that to your child, don't touch that food, haram alaik, that's linguistic, but that's not really what it means in Islam. It's a serious word. Okay? So we understood also in our class last week that falsely representing the haram as halal is prohibited. Okay, so to say that something is, halal and it's really haram, that in itself is a serious thing. So this is one of our principles. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, a group of my nation will make intoxicants halal by giving them other names. So he literally predicted that this would happen. And we will see that this goes on, where people take, especially the drugs, and they give the drugs, designer names of ecstasy and spirits. So they call like alcohol spirits. And, you have nice names to be used, but this is considered to be haram. The Prophet also said a time will come when people will devour interest, riba, and they call it trade. Okay, so this time would come. And so that was our third principle. Okay, that it is wrong for a person to be falsely naming something and making it halal when it's actually haram. So the fourth principle for this session, and that is, and this is a general principle, because somebody could say, well, why is this thing haram? Why is this halal? What's the logic in back of it? The scholars have come, to the conclusion, and looking at the sources, and that is that the prohibition is due to impurity and harmfulness. So things that have been made haram by the Creator, is that it's not arbitrarily done. It's that there is harm in it. There is spiritual harm, physical, or social harm. Okay, and the Quran says that the Creator he permits for them what is lawful and forbids them what is impure. Okay, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "La dara wa la dirar." He said that you should not harm yourself, and you shouldn't harm other people. Okay, so when you look into the things that have been made haram, you can almost logically see what is literally what is wrong with it. Okay, but one of the key issues is that being a Muslim means you submit to the Creator. So whether or not you can logically understand this, we still follow what the Creator said because there's something which is greater than us. And it's obvious, for many people with pork, what is wrong with it. But that's not necessarily the case. Because if you're in China, for instance, two countries in particular, China and Poland. So these countries probably eat more pork than any other countries in the world. And to say to somebody that they can't eat pork, and Chinese people who are coming into Islam, this is a challenge because they are conditioned to love the swine and to love that pork. And I recall a new Muslim brother who had come in, and he was from Poland. And he accepted Islam here in Toronto. And we were discussing things that are haram and things that are halal. And then we came to the pork. And then I explained, that even scientists have found out that the pork, the meat itself, has the highest fat content within pork itself. Okay, so that literally can be a harm for a human being. And also because of the lifestyle of the pig, that there are special adjustments the body of the pig has made. And literally they found different places where pus can actually be excreted because of eating garbage, right? And because pigs generally live in filth. And so there's a number of diseases that come out, like swine flu, and they found so many things even in the meat itself, the bacteria. And if you take a piece of pork and a piece of lamb and beef and just put it in the open, the pork will go bad before the other two because of the fat content. But, our brother, he was embracing Islam, but he said, no, not in Poland. He said, our pigs are different than yours. Our pigs eat only grain. And he even said, and I'm not making it up, the pigs listen to symphony music. Our pigs are actually sophisticated. So it's not like your pig, right? And I said to him, I'm sorry, brother, but a pig is a pig. And you can put him in a tuxedo, put him in a hotel, and put a beautiful meal. He's going for the garbage because that's the nature of the pig. But even if you don't understand it, in submitting to Islam, then we do it because we know there's something else to this. We even used to have a saying here. It's not an Islamic saying, but it makes a lot of sense, where they used to say, you are what you eat. You are what you eat. Because the food that comes into you influences you. Because, it's being broken down into your body. It actually, your body's absorbing it. So you are what you eat. And I don't think anybody wants to be called a pig. Even in the countries where they eat pig. If you look at the lifestyle of a pig, nobody wants to be that. And it's a curse word in some parts of the world. So for instance, in terms of application, and that's how we're going to approach these principles. We want to have some discussion and see, how it can be applied. Alcohol has been forbidden. Okay, it's an intoxication, and that does not mean alcohol that is being used for surgery or to clean things. No, but this is taking in alcohol for entertainment and enjoyment, and uh, it has a lot of harm. And those, some scientists have even found out, and even social workers and psychiatrists, that when a person becomes an alcoholic, they might influence up to 20, 25 people with their alcoholism. And if anybody knows alcoholics, I mean somebody seriously addicted or a drug addict, they will influence even their own family. And unfortunately, they'll start to steal from their own family. Violence comes, all types of things come out of it. And then on the highway, accidents come, and all types of issues come out of alcoholism. Okay, and so it has been shown for physical and moral consequences why alcohol is a harm. However, it's big business. So therefore, it's being pushed into society. And people say, when they see somebody who drinks alcohol and that person is like staggering, you talk to them and they're slurring the words. They're drooling. They're vomiting on the sidewalk. And people laugh. They say, oh, he's drunk. And they laugh. But that person is disgracing themselves. They're harming themselves. And literally, the word in English is intoxicated. So you look into the word toxic. So that person has literally poisoned their body. So you poison yourself in order to have a good time. So this has been prohibited, and it is the Islamic way for it. You might come from a society that has a lot of alcohol and drugs being used for entertainment purposes, but we realize that the Creator, in His mercy to us, has taken us out of a lot of confusion in life with this. Similarly with gambling. And gambling is a terrible addiction. And I've known people actually who are gamblers. A gambling person ruins their own life, and if they're married, they will take milk out of their baby's mouth. It is a mental and sometimes physical addiction. But it makes money. So casinos are built. And I remember in one country I was, and where they said this casino is a way of life. They literally said, this green casino, whatever the name of it was, it said it's a way of life. Like, we say Islam is a way of life. They say to come in here, and some of the casinos have restaurants, they have exercise gyms, entertainments, they have hotels, all types of things along with the gambling. Okay, but this has been prohibited for reasons that Allah knows best. But logically, for most of the cases, in most things that you'll see that are made haram, you can see the harm that it is doing. So this is principle number 4. And I want to open up the floor, any immediate feedback or questions that anybody may have concerning principle number 4. And this is that prohibition of things is due to their impurity or their harmfulness. Okay, floor is open for any questions. Yeah.
Some of us who are new Muslims who came to Islam in our youth may know Muslims that are engaged in haram, such as drinking and smoking. What advice can you give to our young brothers?
Okay, so for those Muslims who are committing haram, then basically we have to encourage them, to come back to the faith. I mean, usually it's based upon their taqwa. Something is wrong in their own life, And sometimes they had the wrong example in their life. They're hanging out with the wrong people. So we try in the best that we can, to show them the harm in that. And even in this society, I was just driving here, and they had on the news, they're talking about that when people go out on the weekends, you should have a designated driver. Okay, you heard that one before, right? A DD, right? So why do you have 5 people going out? You need somebody who doesn't drink. Because if everybody's drinking alcohol, then more than likely they're going to have an accident. So therefore, somebody has to abstain from intoxication so they can make it home safely. I mean, logically, wouldn't it be better if none of them got drunk? That would be the best thing. But the way it's pumped in the society in our minds, it is put up to be like something which is important. And then the movies come, and the person is, he's a tough fighter, or his life has changed. And where does he go in America? He goes to the bar room and he drinks, as if that alcohol is going to solve the problem. But in most cases, getting drunk makes it worse, because his emotions will go out of control. And after he wakes up, from the hangover, the problem is still there. So drinking the alcohol did not solve the problem. Taking the drugs did not solve the problem. Questions? Floor is open for any general questions.
So in the Quran, in the verse that talks about alcohol being permitted, it says there are some benefits. Why does it say there are some benefits, or also say that it's haram?
Yeah. This class in particular is a basic class for new Muslims. So these subjects, this is actually fiqh. So this is jurisprudence. So it can go very deep, in its level. But the level we're on here is basically for new Muslims and those who are, coming in. So we can only go so far, as far as like difference of opinion or this group or that group or whatever. We're just dealing with the basics. But to answer your question, the Quran was revealed over a 23-year period. And there are certain verses in the Quran that were revealed in the Meccan period, the first 13 years of the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Okay? And so therefore there were stages. And so for the prohibition of alcohol and intoxication, there were stages. So in the early Islam, and at that point they didn't fast in Ramadan, they didn't make Hajj, none of the major things were there. They were in Mecca. It's mainly to believe in one God. A verse is revealed that, in the drinking of alcohol, there is good and there is bad, but the bad part is more than the good. So it's encouraging people to stay away. And there's another verse actually that is talking about, do not come to prayer. This is a little bit later on. Okay, do not come to prayer with your mind befogged, because they were still drinking alcohol socially, but they were drinking it. And it's reported that one of the companions, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, and he came to make salat, and he had socially drank some alcohol because it was still permissible. And he read the salat, and he said, "Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun a'budu ma ta'budun." So he said, and if you know that verse, right? Something's missing in the verse. Can anybody figure it out? Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun a'budu ma ta'budun. What was it? La. It says, oh, you unbelievers. The verse says, La a'budu ma ta. I don't worship that which you worship. He was high in our language. And he said, oh, you disbelievers, I worship that which you worship. And they said, Subhanallah. And they corrected him. And the verse came, do not come to prayer with your mind befogged. In other words, don't drink before you're going to, don't be in any state of intoxication. And then shortly after that, the verses are revealed in Surah Al-Ma'idah where it says that, alcohol is completely forbidden. It is an abomination of the devil. Stay away from it. And it is said that they actually took, because they had cisterns or jugs filled with alcohol, and they broke them in the streets of Medina, and the streets of Medina ran um, red or whatever color with wine. And after that, they didn't drink at all. So those two other sections, and I can't go into the details, but those two verses are actually mansukh. They are canceled. So they're in the Quran, but they're canceled by the third one. Okay, so even though it said that, that is an early period of time. And when you read the details, explanations, the scholars will show you how these verses were canceled. Okay, any other questions on the fourth principle? So let's go on. Principle number 5. Again, these are basic ways that we think. These are principles for Islamic lifestyle. You want to know the limits. We want to know how do Muslims think. Okay, so this is going to help you to make decisions because something may be in front of you, okay, that doesn't appear to be wrong. But this principle says whatever leads to haram is also haram. Okay? So if something is not haram in itself, but it leads you directly to it, then it becomes haram in itself. And probably the clearest example of this is where Allah says in the Quran in chapter 17, verse 32, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. Do not approach zina, fornication and adultery. Don't approach it because it is an abomination. It will destroy everything in your path. Okay? So in other words, in many cases, when the Quran was revealed, it said, don't eat this, don't do this. Here it says, with adultery, fornication, don't approach it. You see? Because by approaching it, it leads to it. Okay, so for instance, when male and female who are not married, the Islamic principle is that there should be a third party. The person should not be alone with somebody who's not in the family of the other gender. There should be a third party, a third person there in the group. Okay, and also now with the changes, the indecency and the wrong which is online. So somebody will say, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm just watching something. Okay, but that watching that pornography will lead to committing the wrong. You see? And so by watching it, then that itself becomes haram. That's the principle. Okay? And you can apply this to a lot of different things. And it's safe to stay away from something, and things can get really touchy. You're going to see a lot of things. Okay? Because, for instance, they have like halal beer. They sell it and they put it in a beer bottle. And technically speaking, you can't say that that's haram because in it, the alcohol is not. But for certain people, it could actually be, that could lead people to drinking beer. And if it's going to lead the youth to be drinking beer, you have this taste, the hops, the wheat, that taste in the beer, it's a special taste. And usually when you drink beer for the first time, you spit it out because it tastes bad. But over a period of time, you develop it. And in certain cultures, they drink beer all the time with their meals. So now they have a type of beer that actually they take out the alcohol content, but you still get the taste of the hops. So technically speaking, it is halal, but if it's going to lead somebody, to the drinking of the beer, the rum, then it becomes haram. So this is a general principle that we have in terms of approaching issues, because issues are going to come up to you in front of you. You even have Muslims who are doing certain things. Okay, so should I do this or should I not do this? Even though that person looks like a Muslim, or they say they're a Muslim, but they're leading you into something. They're leading you into pornography or something. So this principle would help you to understand that even that itself can be prohibited. Okay, any general questions on this itself? This one can become very complicated. It can lead to a lot of discussion. And sometimes in certain cultures, having a halal beer, it doesn't mean anything. So I'm not making a pronouncement that all the halal beer is haram. I'm not saying that. Because somebody's going to argue, no, well, but why do you have to have it in a beer bottle shaped like a beer bottle? Why? Question.
So sometimes I feel like you get there's so much stuff that is around us, that's around us in this environment that didn't exist at the time of the Prophet or when the Quran was revealed.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes these things come up and you just get this feeling in your gut, like this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Something about this, but you can't say it's haram because there's nothing. Is that a concept of part of your fitrah? Is there a concept about the fitrah that will have that kind of inclination towards what's good and away from what's wrong?
Yes, this is a good point. The point is that sometimes a person, feels something inside of themselves that it's wrong. And on one occasion, one of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, what should I do about this situation? And he said, ask your heart. And there are some hadiths that say that, the haram things, it actually, is partly based on a feeling that you're going to get. You can sense that this thing is wrong. And so once you sense that, then it is best, that's doubt. And when the doubt comes, avoid the doubt. The problem comes now is that when pronouncements are made on other people and they challenge you, you might get some feedback. But really, this is part of the consciousness of being a Muslim. It's thinking like a Muslim. This is really important because you're going to come into situations, that are not straight out and clear. I mean, I can remember, this might sound really bizarre to you, but I was in the 70s in Medina, and at that time, they had the Yemenis were people, they had most of the restaurants, and so they had these thatched benches, and then people would, sit on the benches and take their food and, whatever. And then they introduced hookah pipes. So hookah. So this is the bubbly, right? So this is another issue that comes up. This is what we're dealing with halal and haram now. And so they had hookah pipes. And technically speaking, what they put inside of there, they claim that it is tobacco. And at the time, many scholars said that tobacco is not haram. It's maybe hateful, but it's not prohibited. And so the hookah, people would smoke the hookah. And they would sit on the things. And this brother from Los Angeles went to one of these restaurants. Oh, and he found out that they were doing this. And he was sitting on this thatched thing. And he was smoking the hookah pipe. And we came by and we looked at him. And we said, no, something is wrong here. He's going back. For him, this is dangerous. Because he came out of a drug environment. And now you're smoking the bubbly now. Okay, and the other thing is, we noticed some of the people sitting next to him. They had lights like Christmas lights, and some of them were smoking this, and they were looking at the lights. Their eyes were fixed to the lights, and they were saying, "Oh wow, look at this, look at this." So we said, "Wait a minute, there's something wrong. That's a drug addict. That's a druggie. Like when you stare at something like that, and it's almost like a, because what some people do is that they take the bubbly and they put some hashish inside of it. Okay, and so these other ones probably put hashish in it. So the doubt involved in this, you see, if it's going to lead you to haram, stay away from it. See, that's the principle. And knowing this, inshallah, in the future, you'll see, can get you out of a lot of serious issues. Anything online concerning principle number 5?
Okay, how cautious should a new Muslim be with gender interactions? At our workplaces, we have meetings in the same room and they shake hands. Should we abstain from all of this?
Yes. So for a new Muslim, as far as gender interaction is concerned, Muslims, we do not live in monasteries. So we have interaction. You're at work, you're at school. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the reason why we're told that we should lower our gaze. Okay, and we dress in a certain way. And so this is where, and inshallah, we intend to do different aspects in this course. This could last the whole year. And part of it is interactions. How do you interact on the job? How do you interact, at home? How do you get married? How do you meet somebody? All these things come about. Basically speaking, at this point, as we're establishing principles that we interact, but be cautious. And when you're dealing with work issues, that's fine. But when somebody takes it beyond work, they come to you and they say, what was the latest review of the stocks? You're dealing with the stock market. And so as a worker, you answer it. And then they say, what are you doing after work? Would you like to go out and talk about the stocks at this restaurant tonight? You see, that's another level now, right? That's social, right? You see, so that's where it stops, because that's not the job. He's socializing with you, or she's socializing, right? And that's going to another level. So just be cautious, and don't be stiff. Try not to be stiff. And the more you understand about your faith, the easier it will be. Okay, so now principle number 6. Principle number 6. And that is that good intentions do not make haram acceptable. This is part of an Islamic mind. So you may have a sincere goal, but it does not justify using haram means. There's a principle, a logical principle that's used even in this society. They say the ends justifies the means. In other words, if you have a good goal, then that justifies how you do it. That's not our position. The ends does not justify the means. If you have a good goal, you can't use something haram. And the Prophet ﷺ said, verily Allah is pure and only accepts what is pure. And he also said, whoever cheats is not one of us. So the ends does not justify the means. So stealing something and giving charity or whatever, no. I remember one of the imams, from Brooklyn, and so he's given the khutbah, and then afterwards, they have. He said, okay, everybody, give your sadaqah, give sadaqah, and so he notices within the sadaqah tray, there's a lot of $100 bills. So he's okay. Wait, something's wrong here, man. There's a lot of $100 bills. Somebody hit the bank. Or somebody might have hit the store. You got to watch out now. So you can't steal and say, I'm going to give my zakat. I can remember this is a true situation. A brother came to me and he said, Brother Abdullah, I need a fatwa. I need a religious decision. I just won the lottery. And I will give zakat. I will put the money toward the masjid. And I felt sorry for this brother because he had some thousands of dollars, but it was gambling. But he said, I'll give zakat. And I said, I'm sorry, I cannot make halal for you what is haram. I can't justify this. You see? So stealing and cheating and gambling with the intention of giving zakat, not going to work. Also, some people, what they do when they're giving dawah, when they're calling people to Islam, or they're trying to, they tell lies in order to get them into Islam. You can't lie. You can't, that's not dawah. That's not the true call to Islam. The ends does not justify the means. Your means have to be good things, even though your intention is good. You see? Even though your intention is good. So this is a really important principle. Okay, and this will come up in different aspects of your life. Floor is open again for any questions. We're establishing principles here now in the mindset of a Muslim. Okay, and any questions here while he's fixing that? Yeah. Floor is open for any general questions. Okay, so the good intention does not make haram acceptable. I'm sorry. And some people will say, no, you can use interest. It happens sometimes. A person may have money that has interest that was taken, and some money which is they earned it in other ways. So the scholars say, if you're going to give to a masjid, then do not give the money from the interest. You might have both types of money. Okay, so give it from that which is good. Now, the question came up once because some people had bank accounts, and for instance, you get a lot of interest. What do I do with my interest? What do I do? Maybe you had $5,000 in interest. So what do? You shouldn't be giving that to the masjid. But some people then say, what are you going to do with it? Some people say, no, give it back to the bank. And then one scholar said, wait a minute, if you give it back to the bank, they're going to use it for something wrong. So one scholar came up with a solution where he said, you can use it for extreme emergency case, where people are starving to death. And then in that case, it's, they can take things that are not necessarily permissible. But don't give it back to the bank, because they're going to use it against us. Okay, but you can use it for some, for people who are in extreme cases, and we have a lot of extreme cases in the Muslim world. It's better to use it for that. So this is part of our ethics. It's the way that we think, and that's what being a Muslim is. Question? Principle number 7. Okay, doubtful things are to be avoided. Now, we sort of touched on this already. So when you're in doubt about something, whether it is halal or haram, the best thing is to avoid it. That's the best thing. And the Prophet ﷺ literally said in the hadith, Da ma yuribuk ila ma la yuribuk. Leave that which makes you doubt for that which does not make you have doubt. Leave it. And he also said, whoever avoids doubtful matters has protected his religion and his honor. Your honor is protected if you stay out of doubtful things. Okay, so that means, we can apply it for many things, but one application could be to avoid certain foods. If you're unsure of certain foods, then the best thing is, to avoid them. And you may come into some situations where you avoid, eating certain foods and doing certain things. Your honor and your religion is protected when you stay away from doubtful things. This can happen in business transactions as well. So when this doubt comes in, and this is a test for us, because unfortunately there's a lot of doubtful things in this society today. There's a lot. But protect your religion and protect your honor by staying away from doubtful things. Now, floor is open for any general questions anybody may have concerning these doubtful things that need to be avoided. Now, these principles will come back. We're going to start dealing with certain issues, and then we'll see where these principles can actually be applied. Any question online that anybody has? The floor is open.
About intentions.
Uh-huh.
How do we purify our intentions?
To purify your intention is that we're doing what we're doing for Allah. And also that, again, we know the limits. The more you know the limits that Allah has set up in halal and haram, it helps us in our sincerity. But the key thing is to be sincere. We can make mistakes, right? But try to be as sincere as possible, in the things that we do. And that's the concept of saying Bismillah. Because, if you're doing things that you can't even say Bismillah, and you can't be a Muslim, and you go in certain places, and it may be it's better to protect your religion. Now, floor is open for any general questions. Principle number 8. This one says, and again, this is our mindset, and this is what distinguishes Muslims from other people, the people of the book. How the haram is prohibited for everyone. So when we think something is haram, it applies to all people. We don't consider ourselves to be chosen people. We don't consider ourselves to be an elite group of people. And this is where the Bani Israel, this is where, considering yourself to be chosen and other people are not chosen. And you can see in the mess that's happening today in Palestine, how they can justify genocide and murder and things. That's the extreme of this. Okay, but it starts with the concept. Even though that person is not a believer like you, okay, you have something haram and you know it's haram. Don't give it to another person. They say, well, it is a non-Muslim, give it to them. You see? That's that chosen person mentality. And there's a beautiful example that it's a long tradition, but basically what happened was there were tribesmen came to the Prophet, peace be upon him. And they had found out that in Islam, if a person steals a number of times and whatever, they should have their hand chopped off. It's a punishment. It's not the first time. It's when the person's become like, over and over and over again, don't repent, whatever. So the tribe came to the Prophet and they said, this man has stolen, but he is Sharif. He is a noble person. And according to tribal law, we can't punish that person because he's noble. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, if Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, were to steal, I would cut her hand off. That's how serious he was. Even Fatima herself, his beloved daughter, and he said, I love Fatima more than anybody else. But there's no changing the law. You see? So haram is haram for everybody. So your wealth, your status, nothing changes you from this. And this is our mindset. And this is what distinguishes us from other people of the book. And it's part of the reason why Islam spread so fast. Because people who were coming in contact with Muslims realized that the Muslims were dealing with them, even though they weren't Muslim, in a positive way. They were actually protecting them from certain things. And if they came to establish justice, if they were wronged by a Muslim, then the Muslim judge, who was a true judge, he would punish the Muslim. You see? That's a mindset. And it's a very important mindset that Muslims, need to have to understand. Okay, so the floor is open for any general questions in terms of application of this principle. This is the 8th principle, in our principles of halal and haram, right? The rules that guide us. These will guide us in certain issues that will come up. Okay, floor is open. No questions? Principle number 9, and this will be the last of our principles we're going to take in this class. And that is, and this is a very important one, and we may even touch on this one again next week for anybody who missed this, because this is a really important principle. And this is ad-dururat tubiha al-mahdurat. Necessity dictates exception. So in other words, when you're faced with a situation of dire necessity, right, then something which is normally haram, it becomes temporarily halal. Right? This is a principle of us. You're in the middle of the desert, and you're driving across. It's Formula Senegal race. They race across Senegal and things. And the car got thrown off, and you're in the middle of the Mauritanian desert, and your water ran out. Your vehicle's down, and you're climbing up, and you come to the top of the hill, and there is labats. Labats? It's beer. There's beer. A can of beer or a bottle of beer is there. What are you going to do? You see? In this case, the person could drink the beer to survive. They can't drink it to get drunk, but they could drink the beer to survive. There might be a case where the person, has to eat pork because they're starving to death. They have to eat pork. They may have to take some medication, which is normally prohibited, but there's no other alternative. So you have to take that medication. So this darura, this is a very important principle here. And you'll see situations come up. And that necessity does not mean a little bit of discomfort. It means something where, your health and your life is really in danger there. And so you can do certain things because of this necessity. You can do it. And we are in situations, you might find yourself in situations. There are probably the most extreme case I've ever heard of. And it was a real case. There were some athletes flying over the Andes Mountains, and a plane crashed. This is some years ago. And they're on the top of the mountains, and all the food is gone, and they're starving to death. And 1 or 2 of them died. And the only food that they had to sustain themselves is to eat from the body of the person. Now, what would you do in that case? What would you do? And this is a decision. It's like a moral thing. I mean, what would you do? There was a native person, indigenous person there on them from Peru. He said, I'm going to die. I'm not eating this. The Americans, they're ready to take steak. They're going to make the chops. And they probably went for the thigh. I'm not giving you no ways to do it. They went for the thigh first, because the thigh has got the cleanest meat you could just get off. Okay, but technically speaking, what they did to survive, and they survived, was correct Islamically. It was correct. Now, after that, when they survive, they need to go to a psychiatrist, because they've been eating human beings, right? And if you develop a taste for that, right, or something might go wrong in your mind, man. But at that point, it was permissible. It was permissible. Any questions on that? Floor is open for this. Necessity dictates exception. That's an extreme case.
I have a question, but it's not about this principle. It's just more general. So a lot of times now, as you said, there's so many doubtful matters.
Right.
And alongside that, we have an abundance of information from so many different sources that's just readily available.
Right.
So I think a lot of times what happens is people are introduced to like a doubtful matter that they didn't even know was a doubtful matter. I'll give you an example. One of the sisters said that she was watching, a TikTok video, and there was a girl who was, she had just washed her hair and she was going to pray, and people started writing in the comments, but you can't pray with your hair soaking wet. And so she asked me, and I said, I've never heard that before. But what happens is now she has a doubt and she doesn't know where to get the answer from. So until she gets that answer, she's going to stop doing that thing, right? And if it's just one thing, it's, it's not a big deal. But when there's so many things that are doubtful, it can be very, I think, overwhelming, especially for a Muslim. So like, how do you, it's a big question, Jay. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this case, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the person staying away from doubtful things. And of course, it depends upon who is the one telling you not to do it, and can you go to a source and find something else? So it is complicated, but the key thing is sincerity. So if the person sincerely, feels the doubt, then it's better to protect your religion and then try to find out right away. In this case, it's not wrong. It's not the best thing to do. It's not recommended, but they can't say that it's haram, like a wrong, if their hair is wet. Not necessarily wrong. And I would say, spend less time on the internet. maybe that's going to solve this part of the problem, because there's too much coming on these TikTok things. Is like so much coming, especially when you see people start arguing with each other and they're going back and forth. I would avoid some of these arguments because it just gets ridiculous. It'll kill your heart. Like it'll, keep Islam simple and straightforward. This is the best way to me. And that is part of the purity of a new Muslim. You understand your principles and you practice like this. Don't worry about these complications. And because the key thing is your sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the key thing. It's not the details that somebody gave you, splitting hairs. Were you sincere? That's how you're going to be judged. Right? Your niyyah, your intention. Your deeds, as the Prophet said, your deeds are based on your intentions. See? And everybody will get what they intend. So your deeds are based on your intentions. Now, there was a question came online. Okay, so the floor is open for any general questions anybody has in the last few moments.
Following up with doubts and struggle with doubts. When I make the do, I think I go from fasting. I'm not sure if I'm fasting or not. I just struggle with doubts.
Yeah, the person said that, they have a lot of doubts, in their mind, and, whether they have their wudu or not. Basically, there is a thing called waswisu, and that is the whispering. There's jinn that are around us. And that's why we have Suratul Falaq, Suratul Nas, these last two chapters of the Quran. So this person, you should read Suratul Falaq and Suratul Nas. Because you'll see that it says we're seeking refuge from Allah, from the one who does waswisu fi sudur nas, that gives these whispering into the hearts of men. So sometimes it's just, once if you have established your wudu, okay, and then you're about to do something, the scholars will say you judge yourself based on yaqeen, based on what was your reality. Your reality was that you made wudu. Okay, and if you have a little doubt about this and that, stay with your reality. It's okay. But remember, there is waswisu. You read Surah Al-Falaq and Surah An-Nas.
Do you want to keep the class at 7 o'clock, or do you want to move it now that Maghrib is getting later?
Yeah.
When we start?
So do you think it's better for 7:30?
Would you guys think? So then we still finish.
Okay, so what we'll do, we're going to officially close the class now, and then we'll have a discussion. So have a safe journey home. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.